filler, no filler.
Yeah, that's what I'm shooting for. No filler.
Hi, I'm Mark Daly, and I'm here on the All Over the Place podcast, where the funsanity never ends.
Hello and welcome back to the All Over the Place podcast, where the funsanity never ends. I am your host, Eric Porvoznik, and I'm just going to jump right in with co-host Jim.
Hey.
How are you there, Mr. Culver?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. Well, we have with us a gentleman who has the album coming out, Wilder All the Time, on the horizon. Coming out, he has been hailed as a consummate showman, singer, and a force of nature. Please welcome to All Over the Place, Chris Berardo. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Eric. Hey, guys. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Oh, an absolute pleasure. And Jim and I have been enjoying, as I've mentioned here, folks, one of the perks of hosting a podcast, we get to hear albums before they come out.
Yeah.
So I will tell you, folks, Wilder All the Time, I'm digging it. And Jim, why don't you go ahead and tell me how you were describing it?
Oh, I absolutely love it. I think it's great. I really love the mix of power ballads, country, and I think a little bit of early 2000s alternative thrown in there. Some bands like Eve 6, I really got that kind of vibe off it. So I was hoping, Chris, give me an idea of kind of what were some of your influences for this album.
Oh, well, I thank you for listening. I'm glad you found something there you liked. I really appreciate it.
Sure, yeah.
My earlier, I grew up on like New York radio, which used to be like really eclectic and really fantastic. So without wasting too much of your time on that, but I mean, when I was a kid, you would hear the Stylistics next to the Eagles, next to Deep Purple, next to, it's just really eclectic, great pop music. So I had a lot of influence, but the rock bands was in a sort of, like classic rock styles. But since I've been making these records since 1997, really, it's been kind of a country rock band. And I did, back then on the radio, they did play a lot of the great Southern rock bands and the Eagles and, like Marshall Tucker and Poco and things like that. And I always sort of settled into that somewhere. And the first 3 albums, I think, are a little more country and a little more acoustic, but this was more like the live sound that we have. So I just wanted something that represented more what we were sounding like live. And so I guess those influences just all seeped in. It's a little more of a rock album. And later in my life, I loved early Bryan Adams records, which people think of him now as maybe a little mainstream, but he had a couple of really cool pop rock records early on. And so that all seeped in. And then, I started the last 10 years or so to get interested in a lot of the sort of pop rock bands that I hadn't paid attention to before, like Big Star and Teenage Fan Club, British band. So, just the sort of pop influence in a rock band. And it's still got country elements because I grew up on that too, listening to Neil Young and the Eagles and that sort of thing. So I think it all melds in there some place.
Yeah, I definitely heard a lot of those influences on it, for sure.
And that gave me time to get a little instant request there, a little Big Star now going on in the background for me.
Nice, yeah, aren't they something?
Pander to your audience and pander to your guests. That's my motto.
They're great. I can't late. I mean, they really knocked me out, and I know a lot of people, love them, and a lot of the bands who came after them kind of model themselves on it. But like I said, I came to it late, but just such good songwriting and singing, and I'm a sucker for jangly guitars and singing.
Well, much like my favorite band, The Replacements, it sounds like you never travel far without a little Big Star.
Replacements, yeah, they're fantastic. I had earlier bands in my career that tried to drink ourselves out of the business like they did, but we never succeeded completely. But they seem to have been the masters at that.
And Jim is doing his best to stifle it. Oh my God, here we go again. It seems every show Provoznik's got to bring up The Replacements. And I didn't the last. Actually, Jim is the one who brought them up accidentally the last time. So, but getting into this,
he's a bad influence on me.
It's a good influence. But with Wilder All the Time, on a previous guest we had on here, another of the Ray's clients. We had the Vapors on, and they had a huge gap between albums. 2006, correct me if I'm wrong, from a full album. This is your first album since Ignoring All the Warning Signs, yes?
Yeah, that was
Complete
2000,
album.
was 2007 because there was a re-release of that. But yeah, it's the first.
So
full
tell
album.
us about the journey between it, because I know, and I'm going to say it right now, folks. Fuck cancer, and Chris, you're a testament to that, and you kicked it in the ass. So tell us about that gap in between and just everything that came into creating Wilder all the time.
Well, the album did well. It was like the one that kind of peaked me through to a lot of people, I guess, that never heard before, and it did really well on XM radio. And I was kind of starting over again. I had moved back I lived in New York for years and then in LA, and kind of came back and regrouped, like I was just talking about, and wanted to see like the kind of music I really wanted to make. And it was more rootsy and had country elements. And so it was a restart for me. And we put out these 3 albums, and that one, Warning Signs, started to make a little noise. And I didn't rush into the next one to start with, because I just had this thought at the time. Everybody suddenly was putting out, everybody can make a CD. Everybody's got a laptop and a dream. So there was just such a flood of stuff. And we were playing live a lot and playing those songs. And I wasn't compelled to like just rush out another album, because I felt like the world didn't really need it, right? There's so much noise out there. And I wanted to wait till I had something specific to say and a little different from that one. What's the point of making that again? And which I looked around to try to find, people to make it with that would give it a little something, a harder edge that I was looking for. So that took I didn't rush to make it. And then things happened. Like, I got sick. Like, everybody has something happen in their lives. And I did. And I had not had anything like that before. So no complaints. I've been rushing through my life like a wild ass teenager, and something's going to happen. Right. So that happened. And that was a challenge, which, like I said, we all have stuff. That was a challenge, and it slowed me down a little bit. Then got off the mat from that and started to record a new album, took a couple shots at it with different producers. This is all by way of pointing out what this large gap was. I didn't get the sound I wanted every time. Then, unfortunately, more life intrudes, and our fantastic drummer of 14 years, the great Paulie Triff, who was our brother and our friend, he passed away suddenly on us. And so things like that kept sort of like derailing. And I looked up and, was surprised at how many years had slipped by. We were still playing live all the time, and I was still writing. And then even stranger things would happen when I did make this album, and I ran into David Abeyta, who produced it, who we can talk about, who's fantastic. And that was the magic for me. Like, now that's the album I finally wanted. So, then people started taking note of it when I was shopping it around, my managers, and we got a couple offers for nice situations, and then we get another one, and then something a little better. And at one point I had a major label deal, and I thought, okay, we'll put it out now. And then the pandemic happened, and that didn't feel right, because a lot of people changed at that company, and I just felt I was going to get lost and tossed away. So you blink your eyes, you look back, and all that time just dissipated. I didn't quit or go away. We kept playing, but it took, people thought I was crazy at one point, but I got into my mind that, look, it's been so long now, I'm not doing anything until I absolutely feel like it's what I want and the circumstance I want. And then we did stumble into this really great deal with Blue Lawn Records, who we're putting this album out with, really great folks. And that felt really good. So the process was long, and I don't even know if it made any sense. That's a really long time. But in the meantime, we did put out lots of singles. Me and David Abeyta, we kind of threw out the chronology completely. And while we were waiting to see who's going to do a deal for us on this album, we didn't want to wait around, because we loved what we were doing together so much. So we put out 5, 6 singles in the meantime that weren't on the album, all new material. So we did the newer stuff first, and then put out the older album after. So I was still making music, still, moving forward, I thought, to the place musically I wanted to be. And then you blink your eyes, here it is, and it's been a long time. So that's almost as long as this answered your question.
Not just a little shy of that, just a little. So, but you mentioned David Abeyta, formerly of Reckless Kelly, and just you recorded the new album down in Austin. And Grant, I've had limited experience there, but folks, you go to Austin, and it just is such a vibe there. And what was it like for you to create this album in such a creative environment as Austin, Texas?
Yeah, it is. It's my home away from home. It's my favorite. I grew up in New York, so that's the best city in the world. But it's really the place I think in some ways I love the most. And it wasn't a new thing to us because we had gone through there. I've been playing in Austin for 20 years, going through. And at the beginning, we would go through for 2 weeks at a time, a couple times a year, because first, it's Texas is so big, and it's got such a great music scene, and there were so many opportunities. And when it was just me and a couple of guys in a van, and we'd play bar gigs or anything for like 2 weeks at a time. And then we started to, play a little bigger places and go for shorter runs, but always 2, 3, 4 times a year. So we knew it, and we had a lot of friends there and musical friends, and, we're part of the scene, which was, extraordinary for carpetbaggers from New York, because it was a really great scene to be a part of. And that's where I ran into Reckless Kelly. Not actually, but I mean, that they were an Austin band and the best band in town. And I was a fan. They were my absolute favorite band. That's still the case. And we had played a few shows with them, and then we went on a 2-week run with them, is how me and David got to cooking up this idea. So, like I said, when he decided to produce the album, he said, well, let's do it here in Austin. And, it felt great because it wasn't foreign to us, and it's such a musical place, man. It just, you just feel like you can step out of the studio, which we would do at night when we were done, and go over to the Saxon pub and see like the guys, that you think are the best just playing. It's really inspiring, and people are, the people down there love music. They treat it in a different way. They start going to dance halls when they're kids, and they just grow up with this respect for real music, real songwriting and singing. So yes, it was a great place to make a record. We did it at Cedar Creek Studios, which is just a beautiful place with, a lot of woods around it. And it just, it was easy to be inspired, and working with the guys from Reckless Kelly and David was, a dream thing, and easy again to be inspired by that.
And you've got guys like Lloyd Maines and Walt Wilkins and Bukka Allen, like the Texas legends. Well, tell us about what it was like having them record with you on the new album.
Well, it was great. It was like I said, David got this idea I had a pretty steady 6-piece band that I'd had for years at the time. They're great. But we'd lost Paulie, as I mentioned, and David had the idea to do it down in Texas, and I was going to bring half of my band, me and my brother Mark Douglas Berardo, and handsome Bill Kelly, the 2 guys from my band who are also great singer-songwriters that people know on their own, but they've been playing with me for years. And we mixed it up with David and 2 of his bandmates. He was in that band for 20 years. He recently left, but Jay Naz, the drummer, and Joe Bass Miller, the bass player. So it was half of Reckless Kelly and half of my band. And, that was a dream for me because, like I said, I'm a fan. I was a fan. So that felt great. And when we had to that was kind of the band for the whole album, those 6 people. When we did bring in people on a couple other tracks, David knew Bukka because from all over Austin, but he'd also, played with Reckless Kelly on occasion. Lloyd Maines, I'd sort of known before just from bumping into him in Texas. He was, he's a legend. And I think I might have sent him early stuff before I ran into David to ask him about producing, and we were talking about that. But, David being who he is in that town knew the best guys. And so that was just a stroke of luck for me that he had. And, it's one thing to know guys and have their phone number, but he had the touch of like what we were shooting for and brought in just the right, never mind that they're so well known, but it was just the right, beautiful touch for it. And, makes you feel great about, the part of the dream of doing all this is to work with great people. So one day you're blasting somebody's music in your car, and then they're learning your song. That was a very nice thing that I'll always thank David for.
So you mentioned earlier with, the pandemic slowing down what the momentum you had started to build up. And now that we're removed from all that, new albums coming out. What's the touring looking like? Getting you on the road to promote this.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's been, we were road dogging it for years, and it did slow down after the pandemic. And to be honest, like, we're ready to get going again, and we've been playing some, but it hasn't ramped back up. It took a little the momentum, and just the fact that after the pandemic, we did a lot of opening. We're the opening guys a lot, which I love. And for people who were my heroes growing up, we did multiple shows with the Doobie Brothers and Dickie Betts, who of course is gone now, but and also like America and Marshall Tucker Band. So those opportunities have gone. No, I hope they haven't gone away, but it never really came back as quickly because venues, just things were different. That one big company is taking over every venue and putting in Live Nation acts, so that's their business. But so that it's been a little tougher to do that, and we had always had those nice opportunities to play for other people's big audiences that they'd cultivated for 40 years, and that was really good. And then we do our own things too. But so it's coming back. It's coming back a little slower than we thought. But also, like I didn't have a new album for a long time, so I think now we're gonna get to it again. I love doing that, and I think that's the fun of it. So I hope that'll just kick up pretty soon, and I think it will. We got a few cool things on the horizon already.
Well, not that I'm that close. As I learned when I drove out to South by Southwest a few years ago, I'm not as close as I'd like to be to Austin, but in Phoenix, if you can wind your way through here at some point, we've got a lot of venues, a lot of cool places to play.
Yeah. I don't think we've played in Arizona, but I'd love to. I know there's a good scene there. I know Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers are from there.
Right.
Band I always liked. So yeah, I hope to. We haven't. It's funny because we really haven't gotten west of West Texas, but we played everywhere else in the Midwest and all through the Southeast and Northeast and and Texas, like I said, a lot. But we never really had the chance before it kind of slowed down to get a little farther west than that. So I hope to, for sure. And maybe jump ahead and get to LA. The label is based in LA, and I've spent a little time out there recently. So we might just jump out there for a few things, hopefully too. So I can't wait. I got costumes. I got a band. I'm ready.
Well, you mentioned Roger Clyne, the Peacemakers. I know a Texas band who we've had on the show, the Vandaliers. They play New Year's Eve parties in the past with them. So let's get Chris Berardo and is it the Des Berardos or is it the Day Berardos?
Yeah, well, the elegant pronunciation, I've never expected anybody would give it a shot, but it would be the Day, but we call it the Desperados. We just put a little space there to make it look elegant. But Chris Berardo and the Desperados is the band that we've had.
I like that. Makes more sense. But having a little bit of French in my background, I tend to want Day Berados. So yeah.
Well, go ahead. You can class it up all you want. I won't complain. That's good.
It's that East Coast thing. I think more of a French thing than a Spanish thing. But on that note, you're a Connecticut guy. So I mean,
Yeah.
how did Americana wrap its way around you, and you wrap your way into the Americana sound, being a Connecticut resident?
Yeah, it's interesting because, like I said, I grew up in New York. I came to Connecticut right around that time. I came back from living in LA in like the late 90s, but before that, I'd been a New York guy always. And that radio, it wasn't like the old days where everything was so regional. Even when I was a kid, you'd hear Neil. I didn't know it was Americana. They didn't call it that, but you'd hear Neil Young and all the great, LA singer-songwriters, Carole King and James Taylor, and you'd hear the Southern rock bands and on the radio, and we didn't know that was roots rock or the Eagles. Who, come on, I mean, those were, sometimes people, I think the Eagles are too big. People don't like to identify with it. It's not hip, but they sang and wrote and played better than everybody. So everybody was listening to roots rock. They just didn't know what that was back then. So that's how it wasn't hard to come to it. It took me years of playing in pop rock bands and rock bands and lots of other stuff to figure out, first of what, I thought I could do everything, because I was a kid and I loved everything and I wanted to be a little like everything. And it took years to figure out, like, what do I really think I can offer that I might be good at, and what really moves me the most, and then how can I do it a little differently, like myself. So that's, the elements of roots rock were kind of there. It took years to peel away the layers and see what was my little space.
Well, Marty, our resident Big Lebowski lover, is not here, so we can share a little love for the Eagles as much as we want to.
I'm aware that that's a taboo there. Yeah.
Well, what did I recently see? It's like just test somebody out, and if they don't like Joe Walsh,
yeah,
Joe Walsh is with the Eagles, but he's still Joe Walsh. He's cool. He lent us a certain respectability to the band. And who were already great singer-songwriters. I'm not going to shit on the Eagles. They had a lot of good songs before Walsh showed up.
Yeah, they did. Listen, they're like, the Eagles don't need me sticking up for them. But like, if you like rock music with great singing, and then these Americana things in it, like these, some steel guitar and some, these country elements. Well, that's who brought it to you if you were a mainstream listener back then. So if nothing else, they definitely like put that music in a lot of people's faces that maybe wouldn't have got the chance to hear it. So I don't know. Maybe
we'll let the hipsters deride the Eagles all they want. I'll pop in Eagles Live or Greatest Hits. No apologies.
Yeah, they're a great band. But also I would hear, like I said, Neil Young, and who now would be an Americana artist, or lots of things like that. You just didn't know what to call it back then. And I always loved the Southern rock bands. I was a big fan of Tucker and Poco and stuff like that. Scanner, but you had to be. So, but
I'm glad you brought up Bryan Adams earlier too, because I will make no apologies for loving Reckless, and that's where he kind of took his more of a pop turn. But Cuts Like a Knife, those two albums, no apologies whatsoever liking that stuff.
Do you know the first album, You Want It, You Got It? The first album, it's actually not the first album. The first album was almost a dance disco album.
Oh yeah.
I had, and then I made a record called You Want It, You Got It, and it's great. And I'm telling you, I haven't heard it in years. I'm gonna go find it, but it's like rock guitars with hooky songs and this killer rock singer. I mean, it's great. And it's funny because this album that I did now with David, I don't even know if he is a fan of that, but it reminds me more of that. It's a funny thing. It's more of a touchstone that I didn't even think about until after. And I was like, you know what it's like. And so that's a good place for me to have, it came from somewhere. I'm sure that was in there someplace because he was great.
Now that you're mentioning it, I mean, I can hear that in Underachiever. I can hear that in King of Fun. Absolutely.
Yeah. And those are both kind of, definitely have Americana elements in there. There's mandolins on all of that and harmonica and on both those songs. So, that was kind of my thing, was to take the rock and the hooky things and harmony singing, which in our band has always been really important. And that's maybe my favorite thing in the world. But then to mix these other instruments in there. That's what I noticed about Reckless Kelly when I first saw them, just as a fan years ago. They're a rocking band, and the fiddle and mandolin, just that little twinge of sparkle of that, and the soulful sort of rootsy quality of it banging together. Man, that's always been my thing. I still love that. It just gives it that breath of something sparkly and softer in there with the hard rock. And those songs you mentioned are kind of what I was shooting for there. Like, what could be my little angle? It's different than everybody who's so great already. And do they, who needs me? Well, I used to think, like, what kind of records would I like to hear more that I don't? Everyone complains, oh, there's no more great bands. And it's not like I had some big great idea, but I thought, what would I like to hear? That took me years to come to that simple idea. And I thought, I like rock music where the guys sing harmonies, but there's these rootsy instruments placed in there, properly. I think a lot of it is that on this album. That's what I was shooting for.
And you nailed it. And it's 10 songs, and folks, like I said, it's coming out later in February, Wilder all the time. And it's 10 songs, and in you brought up earlier with singles, you're releasing all that, and that's really, what's becoming the preferred or just a standardized way of like people just put out a song and they stream it. There's maybe you put it on EP eventually, but when you set out creating Wilder all the time, did you already have it in your head like a template, like we're going to go 10 songs, 40-ish minutes, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I didn't think of the time of it because my songs are like impossibly long. I don't know why. I try not to. I was raised, like I said, on AM radio New York and 3-minute songs, but I can't seem to get things down under 4 minutes. But so I wasn't thinking about the time of it, but we did think 10 songs because I agreed with David. Might have even been my idea first. When we all first switched over with the technology to CDs and you could keep all that information and people are like, oh, it's fantastic, I'm going to put 24 songs on here, but there are, that doesn't mean you have 24 good songs. So I feel like 10, especially an artist like me that I'm hoping people will be coming to for the first time. I hope the people who know of me stick with me, but I hope that this will get some new ears on it. And I wouldn't want anybody, even if it was something you were digging, like I think 10 you ought to be able to say what you want to say in 10 or so songs, if you ask me. So that just felt like a good number to me. And I'd buy a pile of songs by then and things I cared about, but we whittled it down. And that's kind of a nice feeling to be like, boy, we're going to leave off things that I feel strongly about, like, so that it just makes you feel like you're getting down to the, keeping all the quality in there. 10's a lot. I think 10's a mouthful.
Well, I'm going to go back to my days on the shores of Lake Erie and WMMS and Kid Leo. All killer, no filler.
Yeah, that's what I'm shooting for. No filler.
And another project you were involved in, Operation Mend, Hope Part 2. You contributed a song popularized by, was a Nick Lowe song, and then Elvis Costello did it as well. But tell us about your involvement getting with this Operation Mend and how you came to choosing what's so funny about peace, 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 love and understanding.
Yeah, it is a great thing. I'm glad you mentioned that. That comes from the label. I had, I'd signed with Blue Lawn, and we were waiting. It was a year even then. Again, before we, where's all this time go? There was another year there for various reasons before we put the album out. But they were it's their second one. They're great at this stuff, that label. They do a lot of good work like that and charity things. They really, in this racket, as everybody knows, not everybody is the most soulful. It's not the first priority, but those guys are really good. And they've done an album before for the UCLA Medical Center, work they were doing there, veterans. And my album hadn't come out yet, but they said, do you have something, do you have something put on there? So most people are choosing covers of things. And I remembered that we already had, David and I, when I had this deal with this big label, they had asked me in the meantime while we were waiting around, like, well, why don't you cover some of our titles, stuff that they had the copyrights on, and we'll put it in sync, and try to get some placements and make a little money in the meantime. And I looked through their list, and me and David thought, like, songs that obviously that's one of the greatest songs ever. I was like, let's do that. There are a couple we did like that. So I looked at the ones we had just sitting around and said, well, that's perfect. That's the right song for the right moment there, I think. And it came out, as you know, I guess like just a couple months ago, and it's great. It's packed with, it's mostly on artists and a lot of really interesting, cool covers. So I was happy to get it out. I was thinking about putting together a covers EP for after this album, and I still might, because we got a few things stockpiled like that. But it was fun to do. I like a good cover. I haven't recorded many, but all the years in bars, like we always like to get a song and play it like us, and it helps you learn as a band how to have your own sound. And that's, me and David tried to do that there too. Like, let's do it how we do it, and then it's yours. So, but it's a really good cause, and I hope people will give that a listen. Operation Mend through Blue Line Records, if they can. It's worth hearing.
Absolutely, and I will be sharing the link for that one once we get this episode up and on the different platforms, without a doubt. As we're wrapping up, what I like to ask of our guests, someone's not a Chris Berardo fan. What are 3 or 4 songs from your catalog that you would want them to hear to make them a Chris Berardo fan?
Who is not a Chris
Well,
Berardo.
I know. Yeah, in the event that there's that one person who just hasn't heard it yet.
What strange breed? Let everybody. Well, that's a good question. You know, all I can go by is the live stuff, and so I would say on that last album from back when, ignoring all the warning signs, we've been closing. One of the things we close with every night is a song called "So Good So Far," many nights, and you know, I think that sounds a little like, kind of, you get an idea what we were sounding like then. The album before that is called Pure Faith, and that title song is, you know, what I was talking about, you know, a rock band with acoustic elements. And I think like some of these singles we just put out that aren't on this album, as I was gravitating towards the sound, you know, we put out something called Somewhere Blue and a song called Something's Gonna Happen. So I think if you saw those, you'd see the evolution, I hope, of like what was starting to happen. But yeah, there's a lot of something. 40 Years is a song that I'm proud of that's on Ignoring All the Warning Signs. It's a kind of country song, and other people have recorded it. And, you know, it's, again, rock band fiddle, but I'm proud of that one. So that's probably the parameters, you know, somewhere between a little country song like that and what you mentioned, like King of Fun, which is, you know, madness. It's like madness.
Yeah.
So
I can tell you, I really liked Somebody Like Me off the new album. That was a really nice tune. Yeah, I want to say I really dug the positive vibe really on the whole album in general. And you know, as a listener, that's right in my wheelhouse. But you know, it seems like these days, maybe this is just biased because I'm up in the Northwest and that's kind of what the vibe is up here. But up here, you know, the trend is really for rockers to be kind of go kind of more dark and edgy. So, but I really appreciate the, you know, more of a positive vibe that you put out in your stuff. And so, you know, remind me asking where, you know, kind of where's that come from and how do you kind of keep it going in life these days?
thank you. Again, it's sort of like I was saying, I look around sometimes and think, what's my small part? You know, don't do things we don't need, you know, like, so I'll think, well, you know, what's not an angle at all, but like, what do I want to add to the conversation that you don't always hear? And what part of me is real that I want people to know? And I guess, you know, I've been in this business a long time, not a kid. And that means that you have had disappointments and you have had, I mean, that's the nature of the beast. And you have been knocked down and, you know, just a lifetime of it. But I love what I do so much and I'm so lucky to do it. And I think, you know, you get some scars on the soul there, but it does make you appreciate. I've just always been like that, I guess. Like I'd rather keep going. It feels good to overcome a thing. And, you know, I'm lucky. I mean, how I was raised, you know, I have great parents. My dad is like a super, that kind of guy, go-getter, ex-Marine, positive dude. So, you know, that wasn't hard to come to. But I just think there's so many, especially when you do what I do, life is pretty much beautiful, you know, once you get around all the landmines. And so I try to be positive. Why, you know, why couldn't I be? And that's not because I think everything's easy, but I don't know. I feel like it's all in there. And sometimes we all forget it. I think everybody in this world, right, like starts to forget what's lucky. So I just feel like sometimes reminding myself of that. I think, you know, I feel all right. I mean, I got a cool job, man. I feel positive, and I know it's in there in all of us. So I do find that a lot of the stuff is kind of, you know, like persevering. So it's my little way of showing the scars I've had and places I've been.
Legit stitches and the scars they leave behind, if I may quote a song that I have never finished.
Ah, boy, that's good. Finish.
And I'm glad you brought this up, Jim, because I'm going to do my best to make it more of a quote than a paraphrase. But I love this from you, Chris. Hold on to the good memories and dig into the hope for the future. If that's not, you know, Don't look back, but never forget where you came from. I love it. This positivity, man. I'm digging it.
Good words to live by.
I appreciate it. Yeah, well, we got a nice scene here on this planet. Don't screw it all to hell.
Well, I definitely look forward to catching you on the road. If I got to drive to West Texas to do it, it's only like 5-6 hour drive for me. I'll pull it off. I am a road hog, but hopefully you can wind your way out here to Arizona, either to or from Texas, in between with LA. But folks, definitely check out Wilder All the Time from Chris Berardo, coming out later this month, the 28th. And pick up the Vapors, Wasp in a Jar, and Chris Berardo's Wilder All the Time. It's a 2-for-1 stop at the record store.
I have to tell you, I went to the University of Miami, and the Vapors played on the patio out by the pool when I was a kid, and I went wild. I thought it was so cool.
Nice.
Well, you just talk with Ray and get you guys on tour together. Just a couple of one-offs when they're on the East Coast.
That'd be a match.
But Jim, I'm always trying to arrange for tours. It's a blessing and a curse from me.
Hey,
but Chris
I'm open to
Berardo, I
everything.
definitely thank you for taking time here on All Over the Place. Phenomenal having you, and looking forward to Wilder All the Time, getting a physical copy in my hands. And folks, you're going to dig it.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for asking, and let's do this again sometime. Thanks.
Absolute pleasure. All right, Chris
Thanks, man.
Berardo here on All Over the Place. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll be back real soon on All Over the Place, where the fun sanity never ends. Take care.
Take care.
All Over the Place, where the fun sanity never ends.